and his lackeys are putting all of that at risk for their own power. They don't care about everyday Americans. They don't care about the struggles that people are facing with rising costs and a crappy economy. They don't care about using the justice system to go after real criminals. They care about themselves, their own power, and their own wealth. We know the law and the Constitution is on our side. We saw that yesterday when U.S. citizens, the members of a grand jury, they took a stand and said no. And I'm also waiting for an important decision by a federal judge in my case against Pete Hegseth.
Watch what is unfolding right now at the Department of Justice because it reveals a great deal about who Pam Bondi really is, as a federal grand jury reviewed the government's case and firmly responded with a unanimous no that was not close or divided in any way, making it clear they found the evidence presented by the DOJ insufficient even for an indictment. And this all centers around 6 Democratic lawmakers, including Senators Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin, who released a video last November where they simply reminded military service members of what the law already states, which is that they are not required to follow illegal orders. And that alone forms the entire basis of the alleged offense. Anbate, leading the effort, attempted to bring charges of seditious conspiracy against them for essentially repeating existing law, a move the grand jury rejected outright. And now the real question being raised is whether Bondi, along with Jeanine Pirro, will attempt to push the case forward again, despite that clear decision.
Will go to abuse power in order to silence and intimidate anyone who disagrees with them. We learned through the media that federal prosecutors tried and failed to get an indictment of us from a grand jury. This is outrageous. I want to be clear about something. This is not a good news story. This is a story about how Donald Trump and his cronies are trying to break our system in order to silence anyone who lawfully speaks out against them, and to send a signal to every American that they better think twice before they speak out, or they might be next. I want to emphasize this because it's important. Federal prosecutors went to a grand jury to seek criminal charges against members of the United States Senate for something we said. They tried to have us charged and thrown into jail because we said something that they didn't like, because we repeated what the law actually is. This happened here. This is straight from the authoritarian playbook. This did not happen in Russia or China. In Russia and China, we see these things. This didn't happen decades ago. It happened less than a mile from this building in the United States of America yesterday. And it was carried out by a federal prosecutor who got unanimous Republican support in August. It was authorized by an attorney general who is serving as the president's personal attack dog. Folks, this is the master alarm flashing for our democracy. It is threatening the very foundation of our system, that we have a right to free speech, to lawfully speak out and protest our government without fear of retaliation. That we have a Congress whose responsibility and obligation is to oversee and criticize, when necessary, the executive branch. That we have a Department of Justice that is independent and loyal to the Constitution not to one man. Donald Trump and his lackeys are putting all of that at risk for their own power. They don't care about everyday Americans. They don't care about the struggles that people are facing with rising costs and a crappy economy. They don't care about using the justice system to go after real criminals. They care about themselves, their own power and their own wealth. We know the law and the Constitution is on our side. We saw that yesterday when U.S. citizens, the members of a grand jury, they took a stand and said no. And I'm also waiting for an important decision by a federal judge in my case against Pete Hegseth, who this president and Republicans in the Senate chose to give tremendous power. Where are they? Where are the free speech absolutist Republicans now, who were so concerned about the weaponization of government? What happened to them? Where are they as Donald Trump tries to throw senators and representatives in jail for what they say? The best moment for them to stand up would have been in November, when Donald Trump said we should be hanged for this video. But the next best moment, well, that is right now. Because our democracy has been around for 250 years, but it is not guaranteed. From the very beginning of our nation, it has depended on the willingness of patriotic Americans to fight for it. Senator Slotkin and I, we did not ask for this. We're just the first through the breach. But you'll be damn sure that we are not going to back down. We've been in war zones for this country. We fought our country's enemies. This doesn't intimidate us. And we know that this is much bigger than the two of us. The most patriotic thing that any American can do right now is to continue exercising our rights, continue speaking truth to power, and not backing down. Thank you.
Here is what needs to be understood about what just took place, because a grand jury rejection is not something that happens often. And in 2010, which is the last year with reliable published data, federal grand juries issued a no true bill in only 11 cases out of 162,000 presented. Just 11, which shows that prosecutors almost always succeed in the grand jury room. So when a case gets rejected, it is not a small embarrassment, but a clear warning sign. A group of citizens sitting together, reviewing the government's strongest arguments, and openly deciding that the case should not move forward. And that is exactly what happened here, involving sitting members of the United States Senate in a case built around a 90-second video that did nothing more than repeat what military law already requires. And Mark Kelly said it directly during the press conference, explaining that federal prosecutors went to a grand jury seeking criminal charges against United States senators over something they said, attempting to have them charged and potentially jailed for repeating the law as it exists. And every step of that process was authorized by Pam Bondi, so it sat. While attorneys for both Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin have now sent formal letters to Bondi and Janine Piero warning them not to attempt this again, so it at. With Kelly's lawyer Paul Fishman describing a second grand jury effort as a serious abuse of the department's authority, and Slotkin's attorney Preet Bharara, a former federal prosecutor, Katat Shai Dat, continuing to pursue the case would violate clear ethical standards as well as Department of Justice policy, emphasizing that the grand jury already made its position known loudly, clearly, and unanimously. And that final point matters because every single juror reviewed the case presented by and at NDA. Bondi's team and chose to reject it. Yet the situation becomes even more concerning because reports indicate that DOJ leadership has been quietly encouraging prosecutors in other politically sensitive cases to simply convene new grand juries when indictments are denied, not only in the Kelly and Slotkin situation, but across multiple cases, especially those involving political retaliation, where authorities have been pushing hard for charges but citizens continue to refuse. And legal analysis of this practice has been strongly critical, pointing out that such instructions directly conflict with the DOJ's own Justice Manual, which clearly states that once a grand jury reviews a case on its merits and declines to indict, the same case should not be presented again without significant new evidence and proper supervisory approval. Yet Bondi's DOJ does not appear to be operating based on new evidence, but instead under political pressure from higher levels. And at the same time, Bondi has been working to ensure that her own attorneys cannot be easily held accountable, signing a proposed rule in March that would allow the DOJ to initiate its own internal review as soon as a state bar inquiry begins, and then extend that review indefinitely, effectively preventing any outside oversight. And more than 70 lawyers and former judges, including former Florida Supreme Court justices, have already filed a complaint with the Florida bar against Bondi herself, though the bar has declined to act while she remains in office. Then I ask, after which Bondi introduced a rule that could make this kind of protection permanent for DOJ attorneys carrying out the administration's agenda. Pardon attorney Liz Oyer described this proposal as the final blow to ethical safeguards within the Department of Justice, a system she said was already barely holding together, raising concerns that this no longer resembles a traditional DOJ, but something closer to a protective system shielding its own actions, especially considering that Donald Trump previously labeled the senator's video as seditious behavior punishable by death and called for their arrest and trial, which appears to have been the starting point for this prosecution. Not evidence or standard legal review, but a public demand from a president targeting political opponents over their speech. And Bondi moved forward with that direction by using the power of the Justice Department against elected senators for exercising their First Amendment rights. And when a group of ordinary citizens, including people from everyday professions, reviewed the case and refused to support it, the response from the administration was not to reconsider, but reportedly to find a way to try again, which raises serious concerns about the role of the Justice Department, as Kelly described the situation as a major warning signal for democracy, emphasizing that this is happening now, not in another country or another time, but near the Capitol building and under the authority of the nation's top law enforcement official, whom he referred to as acting in service of the president's interests. Dan back the facts as part of a broader effort to use legal power against opposition while also limiting accountability mechanisms that could challenge such actions. And the legal team representing Slotkin has already instructed Bondi to preserve all records related to the case, signaling potential legal action ahead, while Slotkin has stated she will not back down, and Kelly has echoed that position, pointing out that they have faced far greater challenges and will not be intimidated. Yet the broader concern extends beyond them to ordinary citizens who may not have the same resources or platforms to defend themselves if similar actions are taken, especially as examples in places like Los Angeles show grand juries refusing to support serious charges against protesters, forcing cases to be reduced, indicating that the system is still functioning, but largely because ordinary jurors are pushing back against questionable prosecutions, meaning the safeguards are not coming from leadership, but from citizens and individuals willing to stand against pressure, while Bondi remains in one of the most powerful law enforcement roles attempting to weaken those safeguards. And in the end, the situation comes down to a clear outcome where a grand jury unanimously rejected the case. The DOJ may still attempt to pursue it again. Ethics concerns are being challenged, while efforts are made to limit accountability, and the entire process appears to be driven by political direction rather than independent legal judgment, raising serious questions about the use of federal power in cases involving political opponents. And as Kelly pointed out, moments to speak up have already passed, with another one now present as the situation continues to develop and attention remains focused on what happens next.